All right. Good evening to those of you on the West Coast. Good late evening to those of you on the East Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, and welcome to this new episode of Tonight's the Night, the unofficial Dexter podcast. And welcome, fellow Dark Passenger, as we travel down the rabbit hole that is the world of Dexter. Now, if you were here with us last week, as you will know, the way that we typically do things, we do a brief recap of each said episode, which this week the focus will be episode 3, which is none other than Backseat Driver. So we're going to do a recap of the episode, after which I will introduce our guest hosts for this week. Excited to have them on this week. And after I introduce our guest host, we'll get into, a discussion of the episode, diving into our initial impressions, some themes of the episode, as well as some theories that we might have. And then we will wrap it all up going into a review of the show. So with that said, as always, if you're watching this episode after it is aired live, rest assured that we will have the episode timestamped, so you will be able to skip forward to any part of the episode that you so choose. So with that out of the way, let us dive in. So diving into the plot, I'll preface it first by saying warning, spoilers ahead. But our episode opens, give me one second here. Our episode opens with Dexter adjusting to his job as a rideshare driver. Oblivious to the strategies necessary to be good at his job, he receives a rating less than stellar for his services. More on that later. Meanwhile, we find Harrison being grilled, and I'll place this up here, being grilled by officers Wallace and Olivia. Give me one second. Apologies. For his whereabouts based on what was surveilled of the victim's last moments. As a result of their relentless questioning and effective reasoning, he finds himself in their crosshairs as a suspect for the hotel guest's murder. Elsewhere, Dexter's relationship with his rideshare driver friend Blessing continues to blossom as he joins him and his family for dinner. Afterwards, he tracks down the Dark Passenger back to his home and searches through his home to learn more about him while he is away. Elsewhere, Bautista, thanks to his request to have Dex's license pinged whenever activity occurs with it, is able to determine Dex's new whereabouts, which he comes to find is New York City. Still recovering from the healing gunshot wound that nearly resulted in his death an entire series ago, but 10 weeks ago chronologically, Dex takes Blessing up on his offer to have his daughter provide him with an acupuncture session to treat his discomfort surrounding the healing wound. Meanwhile, Harrison, in his efforts to deal with the stress of Wallace and Olivia still on his back, goes out with his coworker and friend Elsa to get away. On the other side of town, we find Charlie continuing the execution of the logistics surrounding the assembly of serial killers in the form of a dinner. Returning back to Harrison, he manages to direct suspicion away from himself by revealing his homelessness to the said detectives mentioned before, which his friend Elsa corroborates. Following this, we find Dex preparing his tools utilized in his hunts of serial killers, as well as Bautista being visited by some old friends Who are those old friends, you may ask? Why, it's none other than Quinn and Masuka at a bar as they discuss his soon to be retirement. Now, moving on, the episode eventually closes with Dex, of course, capturing the dark passenger and getting him on his table. Prior to being offed by the true dark passenger, we learn of the imposter dark passenger's motives, which at the end of the day deals with the need to avenge his father. And we're also provided further clues surrounding Charlie and her employer. As Red, aka the imposter dark passenger, mistakenly IDs Dex as Charlie, who left Red, the gentleman there that we know as the imposter dark passenger, with money and an invitation to have dinner with other quote unquote like-minded individuals, which we of course know to be serial killers. Dex, after disposing of Red, searches Red's belongings, confirms Red's revelations regarding this special dinner to be true. Now intrigued with meeting other like-minded individuals, decides to attend uh, this dinner as Red. And then credits, of course. Now that I have you caught up, now that I have you guys caught up, I want to introduce our guest here. Today's guest is a filmmaker, teacher, actor, an award-winning screenwriter as well. He has written sci-fi and horror screenplays, including doing so for such shows as The Dead Zone and Supernatural. These days, though, he hosts the podcast. He hosts the podcast known as the Multiverse Maniac. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Collider contributing writer Harry Wilkinson. Harry, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, just diving into episode 3, Backseat Driver, for season 1 of Dexter Resurrection. What are your initial impressions, Harry?
Well, we're still in this phase of kind of setting everything up. I mean, there's a lot more to come, um, and my initial impressions are that we've got uh, James Remar back as Harry, which is really great.
Yes.
Um, and we've also got this New York background, which myself being a New Yorker, I really appreciate how well they have used New York in uh, the cinematography, and as a really great backdrop to what's going on. Having Dexter in a city, though he's been in Miami, which is a city, it's a very different city from New York,
Yes.
and to have him in that environment is really interesting, and I find that really interesting. Um, a, there's also just some kind of silly things going on, like the the uh, the dark passenger killer. I
Yes.
just found kind of, when he revealed why he was killing, because his dad was a taxi driver who ride share, you know,
Yeah.
destroyed. It just it was just kind of, I laughed out loud. It was kind of silly.
Well, with
Um,
that being said, let's hold off on that because I
yeah,
definitely want to be able to dive into that, and we'll definitely get into the specifics of that when we get into our grading of the episode.
yeah,
But overall, like just with the episode itself,
yeah.
versus what we got with the, I guess you could say, the double header with the first week's couple of episodes. How did you feel with this week's episode compared? Just initial impressions from what we got last week.
Yeah, no, like maybe 2.5 to 3 stars. I thought the first two were better, slightly better. Um, but yeah, 2.5 to 3 stars.
Okay,
For that.
okay, awesome, awesome. So, getting into some of the themes, as I mentioned, at the top of the episode, and it was kind of set up in that first episode of what Dexter would be up to in terms of his occupation while he was in New York, would be ride sharing. I found what they had there with the current day and age that we have with ride sharing. I feel like is very much a thing in this day and age, which maybe wasn't really as much of a thing when we're thinking of the other iterations of the show. I feel like it's even though they were around at that time and they were coming into prominence. I feel like even more so, we have that idea of ride sharing and how it is its own thing, and how I hate to say it, which I feel like the show kind of addresses a lot, is just that idea, and it plays into the title too. That idea of like passenger entitlement, where it's just all these things that you need to do to be able to appease your passenger to ensure that they have, a positive experience,
You have to have water
as a
in the cab,
passenger, where
right?
you have to have water, you have to have, charging ports, you have to have food. Like, he's like, what is this, a bodega? Just the idea of that, where you just
Yeah.
have to be at kind of like a beck and call of all the needs and wants of the passenger. I found, very interesting, which is very telling, of the day and age that we live in, because it's very much a thing. I don't know how you felt about how they kind of explored that at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, I know. I think it's very clever what they're doing. Because of Dexter's age,
Yeah,
he's able to make commentaries on things like that.
yeah,
When he goes to try to break into the safe, he says, "This was easier before I was 50."
right.
You so I thought that was a really nice touch that they kind of because the series has been around for so long, right?
Yeah,
Like when it started, rideshare wasn't really a thing at all. Um, but as silly as I just said that the whole you know dark passenger killer things sounded to me, it really was honestly really was in New York. Um, a, a big deal that when that happened. A lot of the cab drivers were really upset. There were protests going on all the time. So, I mean, I don't mean to make light of that, but yeah. So it's just because he's been around so long, Dexter can kind of make these commentaries, and that's one of the great things about this show is that the humor of it and his perspective of it with the in the voiceover things that he does are really really nice touches.
for sure, for sure. And then two other things I wanted to get into, and then we can, dive into some theories. Is one other thing that I felt existed in the other episodes, and I guess it, for better or for worse, will continue to go on, because it's right there front and center, just with our initial relationship with Dexter and Harrison, is just that idea of paternal ties, right? Where you have these constant examples of parenthood, of fathers and their kids, fathers and their daughters, fathers and their sons. Whether we're talking about, as I said, the ultimate, overall relationship what we had with Dexter and Harrison. We have the relationship of Blessing and his daughter. We have you just talking about your issues with the dark passenger and his father. Like, he wouldn't have become the dark passenger had, what happened to his father hadn't occurred. So what are your thoughts on that, and how poignant that moment was when we had, I want to say it was during the acupuncture scene, where the daughter there was, discussing just that idea of, yeah, parents can get on our nerves sometimes, but ultimately, there's still love there, and there's still that connection that is needed and necessary. when we're talking about, many of those relationships on this show.
Yeah, well, I love Blessing and his family.
Yeah,
I think they're great characters. I'm also terrified for them because anybody who gets involved
gets
with
close to
Dexter,
Dexter. Yeah, we know.
you know. But anyway, on the father and son kind of thing that you're talking about, um, it it, it plays into, it's interesting that Dexter kind of brought back his dad,
Yeah,
rather than like in New Blood, he brought back Deborah.
right,
But he brings back his dad this time because he's having this situation with Harrison going on. And yeah, I mean that's a big theme throughout all of this, is the father son connection. And it's curious that I guess maybe they're going to hold off on him reconnecting with Harrison.
yeah,
That was kind of a, I was sort of expecting him to do that sooner, but it seems more like he's decided he wants to go back and do his own thing rather than reconnect with his son, which the alter ego of his of Harry is trying to push him to do.
sure,
Uh, so but that is the overarching theme, and eventually that's going to have to happen. It'll just be
absolutely,
interesting to see how they make that happen and what Harrison's reaction to it is going to be. At first, when you first see like the first episode, you kind of almost think like the torch is being passed on to Harrison, where he's going to be the main serial killer. Um,
right.
but Dad's taking that torch back. you know?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, to your point. Well, you know what? I tell you what, I'll save it for. No, well, I guess it wouldn't really be a theory thing. I guess it would be a thematic thing. Is to your point of who becomes, I guess you can say, his inner voice or that representation of it. Um, I feel like maybe on top of what we have there with the need to have that same type of dynamic, perhaps it could also be attributed to, um, and you may disagree with me, Dexter's state of mind, where I know, like in New Blood, he had been going through a cold spell, so to speak. There had been times since he had been the Dexter that we, had known throughout most of the original series, and he had kind of been out of practice and out of the swing of things. And it felt like once he re-embraced that the need to have Harry there was necessary versus having a sister, because in his mind, I suppose, perhaps his sister never really, even though she loved Dexter, you could tell her struggle when she was still around, of really embracing that darkness that he had. So in his mind, the only one who really did embrace that was his father. Ergo, that's why it had to change back to his father versus being his sister, where he was kind of like in this self-imposed exile. And because of that self-imposed exile, there wasn't really a need to have the father there. He needed someone else as a figure there to tell him that he couldn't re-embrace the Dexter that he had been for such a long time. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you're onto something there. Deb was very much on his mind because he just lost her.
Guilt, yeah,
So that would have been front and center for him. I do miss the presence of her. I think they could
I
have
do
worked
too.
her into this. It would have been interesting to see, if you remember, there's this scene where Harry is trying to tell him he needs to reconnect with Harrison. And it would be interesting to see both of them,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Like Deb
yeah,
could be saying,
absolutely.
"Don't
Yeah.
do it, Dex. You're gonna blow up his life. It's gonna be,
So the two, yeah,
right?
the two sides. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. That I mean that would be interesting. That would provide a new dynamic that we have not seen before. Because
Yeah,
up to this point, it's always just been one figure, right? But to have two figures there, it really,
that would be
adds another element there where even amongst, even amongst them talking to Dexter, they could be arguing amongst each other of what the right decision is to make. That would be really cool.
right.
Um, so, in keeping that in mind, going into the last theme that I wanted to get into, which I'm glad that they tackled in this episode because I really, really had an issue with this in the first two episodes in terms of how the story played out and the decisions that were made. Is the idea that even outside of what we have with rideshare driving, that we live in a day and age where so much is monitored, so much is surveilled. Like the moment you step foot out of a door, in the modern age that we live in, folks would be surprised how much everything is surveilled. And that was an issue for me in talking about a critique of the first two episodes. It's like, how was he able to, Harrison able to accomplish all of this and no one actually see him? I'm sorry, like from him leaving the guest room, if you're at a hotel, to going to the kitchen, where you need, I mean, even in this day and age, I know that it may not be the case maybe everywhere, but in most cases, even if it's not in every crevice of a kitchen, it's not unusual for kitchens in businesses like that to be surveilled, because it is a place or a portion of a business that people can escape through, so they need to have eyes there. Or if it's something where something dangerous is being done with food, like there needs to be a surveillance or a watch of that. So it was hard for me to fathom that he was able to accomplish what he did, leave the guest room, the guest's room, and take him down to the kitchen, do what he did in the kitchen of dismember everything, and then also taking him out to the garbage truck with all the trash bags, and not have, I don't care how late it is, it would still be surveilled. And I was like, there had to been, like, I feel like you still needed to have something to be able to explain that, because at least with other shows, maybe with Original Sin, you could say, okay, this was a different time. Like this was earlier. We didn't really have that technology then. People weren't really being, surveilled that much at that time. So, you have more suspension of disbelief of, okay, I could see how he might have gotten past that, or been able to get away with that. But in this day and age, it's supposed to be, so far as I know, this is a modern show of the current date and time that we're in now. And to say that he was able to accomplish all of that, it was hard to fathom. So
Yeah,
I like how they were able, in certain instances of this episode, illustrate that, and how that can be another factor that can make things difficult, whether it was with Dexter and with Blessing, where he was coming home that night after ride sharing, and Blessing had what, that ring camera, where he was able to speak to Dexter, which is not unusual in this day and age that we're in. It's very common. Or even in the situation with the wife, where the wife had done a background check on Dexter,
yep.
like I was like, thank you. I appreciate that you are acknowledging this, because it didn't feel like it was acknowledged in the first two episodes, was a major issue for me. I don't know if it was an issue for you, or if that was something that you thought had considered, but
Well, I
um,
mean,
it bothered me.
I think they sort of handled it in the way that Harrison knows where all the cameras are, right? So
Yeah,
he knows how to
yeah,
duck them.
yeah,
Um, well, the thing that in this episode kind of felt weird to me was Detective Wallace goes through all of this and she pinpoints exactly what happened. I mean, she
Right.
just, and
He's
then
a savant. Savant,
Harrison
yeah,
tells him, "Oh, I live in the hotel because I'm homeless," and that's like an alibi. And she kind of just drops it. At
accept it.
least
Yeah,
I think
initially.
she drops it. Maybe she
Yeah,
won't in upcoming episodes, but
sure.
that just felt weird. Like that's not really an alibi. I mean, he could still live at the hotel and have done everything that she, you know, worked out. She worked that out so meticulously. Like, why would she just kind of abandon that because, um, you know, he confesses his homelessness? It's kind of weird.
Yeah,
I'm not sure where they're going with that storyline, quite frankly.
sure. Because I mean, him being homeless doesn't remove the fact of him being a suspect. He can still be homeless and still
Not at all.
that's not a factor that would kind of like as you said, remove you from that level of suspicion that they have him in. It wouldn't have been something like, oh, okay, you're homeless. Okay, great. Perfect. Like you're
You're done. No, no
you're
problem.
done.
We'll
We're
move
all
along
good.
here.
We're all good here. So um yeah, like they were. As I said, I'm happy that they were able to address that because, as you said, there are a lot of things with this show that they set up as factors that provide new life to Dexter, but at the same time, I feel like they have to actually embrace those things that will make the show unique. As you say, you talked about the fact that they're in New York. That was actually one of the things that I liked about this show versus New Blood, because as someone who has lived in a small town, being an undergrad, it was a small town. There's not much that gets past, folks, when you're in a small town. Like everybody knows everybody. So it's hard to believe that Dexter would be able to thrive in an environment like that where, in a city, everyone is such a big, the space is so big. So, people have a tendency to overlook things because, they're just minding, their own business. It's not a situation where things are move kind of slowly where, there's time to focus on other people and their business because because there may not be a whole bunch to do. So by placing it in New York, just like you would have with maybe LA, there's so much going on in a place like that it's not unusual for maybe things that seem out of the ordinary to seem okay.
Oh yeah, and you can have creepy serial killer dinner parties.
clearly, clearly, clearly. So so as I said, I'm interested in a lot of things that they tackle thematically. I'm curious to see how they perhaps approach some of those things mentioned going forward, or some new things that we have. But getting into theories, um, one thing that I feel like they might be setting up is this whole situation with him becoming a better rideshare driver. And I feel that based on what we know about Dexter, that he may have one call sign that might allow him to really raise his rating, which is, if you know some of the things that he brought to the police department, it used to be what? I don't know if you remember, like the big donuts. Like I feel like he's
Oh,
gonna end up doing donuts. Like he's gonna say, "Oh, okay, we need to bring snacks. Cool, I'm gonna have donuts." That really,
he learned how to ingratiate himself
yeah,
into
to
the
ingratiate
environment that he
himself.
was
Because I
in.
mean, he's not.
Exactly.
That is something that he's learned to do, even at his prior job, is being able to ingratiate himself to people. And I feel like he's going to have that translate over to this new role as a rideshare driver, where just like he did when he was at, in Miami, he's going to get donuts and he's going to, have that available at the disposal of passengers to be able to have at their discretion. So that was one thing that came to mind for me. But perhaps there's some other ones uh, that you had thought of in terms of scenes
Theories.
that they
Okay.
planted in this episode.
Well, obviously we have this weirdo invitation that
Yes.
he, and I was wondering why this Dark Passenger character looked and sounded a lot like Dexter. And now I see what they're doing. He's going to take his
I
place and
didn't. Yeah.
sort of join this group. I was also wondering what the heck they were doing with Uma Thurman as this Charlie. There didn't seem to be anything that she was doing, but there's a scene where she's in a restaurant preparing these things. So my theory is that she's involved in this group that is organizing this serial killer dinner party. That's my theory, is that she's involved in that. I know Peter Dinklage is in the cast, but we haven't seen him yet.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be somehow a part of that. So that's my big theory, is that that's going to be seeing how he deals with interacting with his peers, so to speak.
Yes.
I think that's going to be the big theme in for the rest of the show, and what happens with that. Do these serial killers start? Does he start plotting to kill them because he doesn't like how they do things, or so I think that's my biggest prediction. I also think, eventually he's going to have to connect with Harrison. And the other prediction was, oh, yes, this is the thing. Harrison's connection with, what was her name?
Elsa.
Elsa, thank you. His friendship with Elsa. My thought of this was that Elsa is this single mom. She's got this kid, and that if Harrison gets involved with her, that it's going to mirror Dexter's relationship with his mom, if you
Mm.
remember,
Mm-hmm.
because she was single mom with 2 kids, and they got
It's a mirror.
involved,
It's a mirror of what
and
that reader relationship. Yeah.
it did not work out
Well.
well, and I
Well.
think
Right.
this will not work out well either. So I'm predicting that that's going to be like a mirror of that, and he's going to get involved with her, and she's going to find out about him, and it's going to be a mess.
No, I mean I hear you. I guess with to speak further on what you said, I do agree that they might be trying to mirror that relationship with Rita. And speaking of the Charlie aspect and what we have with Peter Dinklage, it seems like they were able to. And I don't know how much of the like trailers or promotional material that you've seen. Maybe you came in completely cold. Is it seems to be that, and I could be wrong about this, but it's implied that Dinklage's character is behind this entire dinner, and he has Charlie there as an associate of his to recruit everybody and to do like the invites and everything. What we don't know as of yet is why. Like, why is he doing this? What is the end game? In doing this. I guess the only thing that, like you, that I'm really fascinated by is what's going to happen in terms of all of those characters being in a room together. Um, what is the thing that makes them unique among their each of their colleagues, so to speak? I'm assuming each of them are special in terms of how they operate in their own way, It would be really boring if they were all the same in terms of how they operate and in the manner in which they do what they do. So I guess that's going to be the part that's really going to be fascinating. Um, One thing that was brought up that I really do like, and there's no proof of this, but shout out to Kevin, who was our guest host last week, is the idea of perhaps setting up all of these villains, and after establishing all of these villains, who all these villains are, and how they operate, whether they're going to be, set loose, and it's almost like Dexter has to kind of like what you have in like Marvel Comics, right? With the Raft, where all of them are just set loose upon New York, and he has to track each one of them down, or maybe he only has to track one of them down on one season, and if they're planning it out that far ahead, that he's tracking down each of these major villains throughout the seasons that we have for Resurrection, and they're basically kind of just setting the board of who these characters are, which would be different for a Dexter show, because typically when we're talking about prior iterations of the show, we're being introduced to these characters like as the season is progressing, versus already knowing them, getting to know them. Maybe there's some ones that are favorites of ours, and then as seasons come on, like, oh, it's so and so, oh, it's this, oh, it's this villain. So I mean, that could be interesting if they decide to go with something like that, where we're actually being set up with this entire run of Resurrection of who our villains are already at the beginning, and then we incrementally have to go after each of them when they're set loose upon upon a given area. So
Yeah.
one other thing I was going to say is, outside of that, is it will be interesting to see in meeting each of these characters, if it changes how Dexter feels about his code. Will there be some that he really, has issues with, or are there going to be a lot of them that he's going to be really conflicted with and not actually move forward in terms of enacting his code with? Because I mean, in some instances we've seen it, but it would really be interesting if there truly are some other instances with some of these characters that it kind of brings his code into question, because we're starting to see it now, even with the series, that he's continuing to evolve, where when before it seemed to be a need of his to be able to carry out this code, the now it seems like, while he still has the code, but there is some semblance of humanity behind it, where he actually does have a need to be able to save or help, people, when before I feel like it was just a rationalization to be able to carry out, what he wanted to do.
Oh, so you're seeing a little more humanity in him.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Mm-hmm.
was going to say, one thing that we also talked about last week is where I think we're kind of coming to an impasse with him and Harrison, where Harrison is descending and he is ascending. So, like, while Harrison has elements of him where he had a lot of humanity, we saw a semblance of how he reacted when he went after what he did to the hotel guests, him throwing up and all those things, which are normal reactions. There aren't things that I feel like would have happened with Dexter had he carried out the same thing, but
Mm-hmm.
we're incrementally starting to see that he actually is starting to, and it's not to say that he never did, because even in other shows he did care for other characters, but it was intrinsically people that were in his life, versus it being, something that was just a general thing of just caring about his fellow man. It was only typically only those close relationships that he had in his circle, versus just being a a good doer. So, or
Yeah.
do
Well,
gooder.
I also don't think Harrison has a dark passenger per se. he's not like Dexter in that way. He's been influenced by Dexter. I mean,
Yeah,
because he's seen what Dexter does,
yeah,
and that you can right wrongs, whether or not you believe this is the correct way to do it, but that you can right wrongs by, you know, killing the bad guy.
yeah,
So I think he has this experience with his dad that this is okay, but I don't think he has the compulsion. Like he's got like Dexter has to seek out someone to kill.
yeah,
That's why he has the code that guides him to do that. But if he
yeah.
didn't have the code, he'd be seeking out, you know, whoever. I don't think Harrison has that in him.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't know. I like I, I see what you're saying because I'm basing it off of like what we've seen in his interactions with others, how quickly he's able to develop a rapport with people, even better than Dexter
That's true. He's a
is
better
able
liar than
to.
Dexter.
So I don't know. I feel like it would be really interesting if they try to show that mirror of one going down and one going up. I could be wrong. It may not be going that way, but I don't know. It seems like based off of showing that progression of how he is in the beginning of how he responds in committing what he commits to the guests, the hotel guests, that I feel like they're going to show how it's becoming easy. Like it'll incrementally become
Mhm.
easier for him to do, horrible things like that versus, Dexter, who is someone who would have done it, without a second thought, but is going to contemplate more the impact of carrying out such things. I feel like by having a challenge of all of these other characters that he's going to meet in coming episodes with this dinner, it's going to kind of challenge his kind of black and white approach to the code. And don't get me wrong, like I feel like there is some gray in there of experiences that he has, but I feel like it's going to become even more gray in the interactions that he has with them. And understanding that, yeah, all these people are very, that they have darkness to them as well as myself, but I want to, it's in that many of them have like their humanities to them, or have elements to them that um that he's able to understand.
That
So
would be really interesting. Yeah.
but with that said, getting into our final thoughts with our review, because you touched on it at the top,
Mm-hmm.
going into a little more detail, how did you feel about episode 3?
Oh, okay. So I'll give you my ups and my downs on that.
Yes.
Um, yeah, for me, like I mentioned to you, and before, having James Remar back as Harry is great. Um, it's I have a really hard time uh, seeing a through line between him and Christian Slater's version of the character. It's just with this version of Dexter, it's very jarring to see. Like some of the other actors, like Patrick Gibson's Dexter, is you can really see the through line there. They really seem to be the same guy. Same with James Martinez, who plays the younger version of Batista. He really captures David Zayas's version of Dexter, of Batista, and the same with LaGuerta. But the two that don't really mesh are Christian Slater and Molly Brown's Deb. Just is an entirely different Deb from what Jennifer Carpenter has done. So that's kind of a down for me, not for this show, but for for the continuing saga that's going to be Original Sin. Another, let's see, another down for me was sort of this the detective who's grilling Harrison, and Harrison's sort of alibi. And after going through everything that she does, Detective Wallace, sort of accepts his alibi as okay, you're clear.
Yeah.
Um, that just seems kind of weird to me. Um, yeah, we're still waiting to see what's going on with Uma Thurman, so I'm not sure about what that character is. Some of the ups I have are uh, having Batista back. I mean, that's great, and I think he's going to be Dexter's biggest foe because think he's on to Dexter. He's figuring it out. I think he's starting to get pissed that he was fooled all these years and that Maria was killed. And I think he understands that he probably was behind Maria's death and he loves Maria. So he's going to be like, and he's leaving the force. So that tells me he's going.
He's not going to be held back by any type of any type of protocol with law enforcement.
Not at all. He's gonna go full bore on him. So that's gonna be really interesting. Um, I mean, I like the whole idea of the serial killer dinner party, and I'm really fascinated to see what happens with that.
Yeah.
Um, and the other characters I like are, as I mentioned, Elsa is really great. I'm looking forward to see what they do with that character. And also Blessing and his family are great. I really like that. So those are kind of my ups on the episode. All in all, I think they're getting back to what Dexter was at the beginning. And I know that just numbers wise, I just heard that the premiere was Showtime's biggest streaming premiere ever. And it was like over 40% over the premiere of Original Sin, and something like 79% over New Blood. So people are really
Yeah.
interested in the show. At least we'll see if those numbers continue. But it really has unexpectedly to me, because I thought it was all over. Quite frankly, I thought it was all done. But it really is got a new energy to it. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
For sure. I guess for me, I'll start with the things that I don't like, and then I'll wrap it up with the positive. Uh, One thing that I talked about last week was the idea, and I mean, this is just a stylistic choice. Is they have this habit of doing this this transition of like this flash forward transition where they're showing all of these scenes that are going to be happening in the future, but they show it in a flash as a transition. One thing that it reminds me of is if we're talking about a show like for those who watched Angel out there, like Angel did this a lot, where whenever they had those transitions, they had those quick flash type of flash forward moments. And I'm like, please stop doing that. Please stop doing that. That's just personally, subjectively for me, something that I feel like is not necessary with this show. Where I feel like it's more distracting, if anything, versus being, stylistic as a choice to transition from one scene to another. I know that's a small, minute thing, but it is something that bothers me, and I'm sure for some people out there, it may bother them as well. Um, Other than that, I guess the one major thing that had been bothering me is the logic of how things were playing out were things that bothered me, and I feel like they corrected it in this episode.
Mhm.
I liked what they managed to do with some of the things that are givens in our current in our current society right now. And whether we're talking about the trend of ride sharing, whether we're talking about how highly surveilled we are in this current day and age, and how that factors into challenges that Dexter will inevitably face if he continues as the Dexter that we've come to know. Um, and then also, like you said, I will be interested to see how all of those other characters come into play and what makes them, unique. I think, in speaking to what you were talking about in terms of the interest in the show, um, I don't know if it was this way for many of you out there. I had watched the original run of Dexter. I was super excited about New Blood, and then like New Blood happened, and it was like, okay. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't bad, but I mean, it wasn't what I was hoping as a continuation of that story. And so at that point, I was not in a great place with Dexter. And then Original Sin came along, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot. And Original Sin ended up being great. Like I enjoyed it a lot, as you have mentioned already, with a lot of the actors that they were able to manage. Kudos, give an Oscar to your casting director. Many of those actors uh, uh, transition perfectly into the characters that we know on the original show. Like whether we're talking about Angel, whether we're talking about even Masuka, like the actor that you have for Masuka, I thought he was great. Other additions that you had on the show with Sarah Michelle Gellar, I wasn't sure how she was going to factor in, but what they were able to do with her character, played a she played a role among that precinct, a vital role, and even in the development of Dexter too, in terms of how he developed as a character and even developed in his role at the precinct. And to a lesser degree, based on the scene that we had on that show, of being able to inspire Deb to actually join the precinct as well, which was I didn't actually see, and was unexpected, but it was cool. Cool scene. So if I were to give this episode, I know last week I had given like 3.5 slides, and I know I have what is it, microscopes here, but we will imagine them as slides. I had 3.5 slides for episode 1 and 4 slides for episode 2. I would say, the same with this episode. I enjoyed this episode a lot. So I would say I would give it 4.5 for this episode, because again, you're completely embracing the nature of the day and age that we live in instead of ignoring some of those things. And in doing so, it made the episode more effective for me than it was last week. So, um, any final thoughts before we wrap up here, Harry?
Yeah, no, just look for that Batista uh, Dexter showdown. That's going to be great, and whatever happens with this group of serial killers, that's going to be, I think, the big arc of the show.
For sure. For sure. So, with that out of the way, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. That's going to do it for this episode of Tonight's the Night, the unofficial Dexter Resurrection podcast. I'm going to punt it over to my guest host this week, Harry Wilkinson. Can you tell folks where they can find you, Harry?
Yeah, you can find me, my podcast, Multiverse Maniac, anywhere you listen to podcasts. There is an extended version that only Spotify listeners get. So if you're a Spotify listener, you get the extended version of that. You can read my articles on collider.com as well. And You can also get me on Blue Sky. It's Real Mystic 26 at bluesky.social.
All right, excellent. Well, again, I want to thank Harry for hopping on this week to talk about episode 3, backseat driver of season 1 of Dexter Resurrection. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X, and also Brandon Choi underscore ENT on Instagram. That out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and see y'all soon. Bye.
Hi.